Hi, good morning, and welcome to the fourth in our series of Ask the Expert webinars by Outer Reef Yachts. I'm Mike Schlichtig, the General Manager of Outer Reef and part of our sales team. I see we have a few returning visitors from our last webinars and a few new people, so thank you for your attendance. The goal of our webinars are really to introduce prospective owners to Outer Reef and give you a little bit of a look behind the scenes as to our product lines and how they're developed and how they're built. This is meant to be an interactive experience, so you should have a little drop-down box that you can submit questions, and we'll do our best to get to them as quickly as possible. Joining us today is Tribrid. Trevor may look familiar. He was in one of our original webinars. Trevor is our director of our European offices for Outer Reef. And also joining us live from the shipyard is Grant Willis. He's our shipyard manager for the Trident Series. So today we're going to talk a little bit about why the Trident Series was developed, some of the unique construction methods that we use to build the Trident that were adopted from the mega yacht world. We'll first take a look at some visuals on the boat. We'll talk about some of the hull design construction methods and some engineering. The interior design of the boat was really meant to be very functional, spacious, things like soft edges for joinery, highly durable materials, handholds, easy movement about the companionways. We were very cautious about sound, vibration, seating configuration, things like that. So as we scroll through, the top left photo is a photo of our galley aft version, basically showing forward. We really like to embrace the open concept, the big large windows. This is a walnut interior, fairly on the modern side. The photo on the right is our master stateroom. That is a midship master, which is really a staple of Outer Reef's designs, with a king-size berth, and we have a VIP berth forward. Here we have a quick shot of our helm station with our dual screens, joystick controls, and some seating. Our engine room for a boat in this size is quite unique. It's a full stand-up engine room. You have plenty of space to get around the mechanical equipment. You can access that through the lazarette/crew area or off of the swim platform. We also have the availability of putting a crew quarter in this boat. And this boat is a 3-stateroom, 3-head boat. If we do the crew, which we're looking at the crew berth, we also have another head in the back, and then of course we have our mechanical space as well. Again, our lower deck layout focuses around a midship master. That tends to be the least movement in any boats, and it also tends to be the quietest. Then again, the VIP on the foredeck, forepoint, and we also have the port guest stateroom. And again, you'll notice they each have an in-suite head. Our main deck level, we have two options. This is our galley aft. The galley aft version was really designed to give that feel of a cafe. If you can look behind Grant in the middle, you'll see the window lifts up, the door opens up, and it gives a very big outside feeling from inside the boat. We also have a little more traditional mid-galley version that has a salon aft. So one of the things that we designed the boat to do is we're really replying to requests from potential owners who were interested in a boat that fit a little bit younger demographic than our Classic series. We were looking for a robust boat, a very well-built boat, a world-class vessel that had some sleeker lines but still maintained a bit of classic lines. We look at the market today and we see so many boats that we believe are going to be very dated in 5 to 7 years. And we really wanted to look for a product line that a younger cruising couple would embrace. And we really wanted to be a world-class vessel, kind of a wolf in sheep's clothing, if you will, in terms of the structure of the boat. This was really a collaboration between Outer Reef Yachts and Ward Setzer. We wanted to come up with a truly unique hull form. We didn't want to just steal an old, outdated semi-displacement hull form or a planing hull form. We really wanted to start from scratch on this hull and develop something really unique and new. And it took us well over a year of engineering, various computer testing, and actual tank testing to come up with the hull form. And it's a hull form that we call the Tribrid hull form, and it is a patented hull design. And we'll get into that in a little more detail in a few minutes. For those of you who aren't familiar with Ward Setzer, Ward started his career as a naval architect at Hatteras back when they were still hand drafting boats. He ended up running Hatteras's production line facility, eventually started his own design studio, and has quite a few accolades to his name. If you're familiar with Trinity, the mega yacht builder in the US, Christensen, Northern Marine, he's designed some of the Hinckleys. So really a experienced naval architect that adds a degree of pedigree to the boat. We really put together a team to develop Trident that had a history of mega yacht construction. Obviously, Outer Reef has a reputation of building cruising yachts, long range, well built. Obviously, Ward's background speaks for himself. And Grant, who runs our shipyard, also has a history of mega yacht building. We actually met Grant probably about 12 years ago when we were in Asia looking at doing another project, and he was referred to us by Ward. And we really knew back at that point in time, in a future project, we really wanted Grant as part of our team, and we were very fortunate to be able to get him on board with us. The Tribrid hull form that I mentioned a few minutes ago really was designed to be very efficient at all cruising speeds. We were looking for a seamless transition from semi-displacement to full displacement and planing. We were looking for something that had superior all-weather performance and was an exceptionally dry ride. As I mentioned, we did a lot of engineering on this boat, and you can see on this slide we actually created a scale model. We went to one of the largest tank testing facilities in Croatia, where we put the boat through a full set of tests. The excerpt here on their remarks and conclusions, there's just a few things that I want to read from this excerpt. It says that the deck experienced no green water. There was no bow spray on the boat across all speed ranges. It also talks about the fact that there was very little acceleration in the boat's bow movement. There was nothing that would cause the crew to slow down while cruising at 16 knots in 5-foot seas in a very sloppy condition. At 16 knots, the vertical movement of the boat is less than 1/10 of a G, which is incredibly low. And most important summary is at 16 knots in very sloppy 5-foot seas, there was zero slamming, there was zero bow emergence, and it was just a dry boat. So those are the things that we really wanted to accomplish, and both the real world and our testings really show that. Trevor, you have over 20 years of experience in the EU market. You've worked as a consultant for builders, you've worked as a distributor, you've been involved in sales across the board. Can you tell us a little bit about the market and how Trident really fits into that segment?
Yeah, sure, Mike. Well, I say I come from a background that's more European-based and obviously our head office in the United States. So I'll bring a different flavor, I suppose, to the elements that went into the Trident. I suppose about 7-8 years ago, we started to see some of the mainstream builders that are producing, planing boats and the more glamorous sort of, Saint-Tropez, south of France style of yachting, moving into more of a what they would call their long-range versions of a sort of a raised pilot house, or a more contemporary version of perhaps even our classic series or the traditional long-range yachts that were, dominating the market at that time. And we looked very carefully at what they were doing, and obviously saw that there was an element there of clientele that was very attracted to that more modern contemporary design. And we're looking more closely at that rather than the traditional builders such as our classic line and others of similar ilk. So we looked carefully at it as well. But what we found is most of these builders were building a yacht that was based around their traditional and their mainstream production in terms of the engineering and the design of the hull, the way they put the boat together. And in many cases, you can see, if you see these boats out of the water, they're pretty much just their planing boat hull designs with a more of a pilot house or long range upper works on it. So when you look closely at these yachts, they're not really offering you anything much more than a standard planing hull style of yacht. It's just more an aesthetic. And while they may look attractive, the issues that have seemed to have arisen through many of these boats that have come on the market is that when it comes to the seakeeping, long range, the actual construction of the boat, the way it's put together, the interiors, how they're designed for long range, or maybe they're not even, getting the kind of feel as a long range yacht, it kind of falls short. So when we started looking at the Trident, what we wanted to do was to bring our classic series and that bulletproof, go anywhere ability into a more contemporary style. So what we did is we then looked at all of the components that make a successful long range yacht and transition those over from our classic series into the Trident series. So very important things, many customers who come from a classic kind of style of long range yacht will look for is wide open companion spaces, so that there's no pinch points when you're trying to move around the yacht in bad weather, that there's plenty of handholds, that the laminations are up to specification, things like the mooring gear, again, all up to specification, where you're going to be mooring offshore and in remote places. Other issues like having a proper crew space. A lot of the boats in the size range that claim to be long range boats, when you look at the crew space, they're very small. You're ducking down into a little hole in the after section of the boat, whereas with the Trident you get a full-size crew cabin, full stand-up headroom, full-size heads, shower, and also very important for long-range yachts to have a special machine space where all the delicate electronics and stuff are kept outside the hotter space of the engine room. And again, things like deck fittings are all oversized. Many features that you would find on our classic series brought over into the Trident, so that we have that still, that ability to still, go the long distance, long range, be in any sea condition and not be worried. And also the Tribrid hull being able to, transition from its displacement speeds into a semi-displacement and then into a planing speed to be seamless and not to have this kind of crest which you're always trying to push over, which is very inefficient. So what we find is with the Trident, we have great efficiency at low speed, also at our semi-displacement speed, and also at our sort of high cruising speeds, which are 20 knot plus. So we tend to find that our range is not dramatically affected by the actual speeds that you're traveling. Whereas with many of our contemporaries, of course, the second you start to move out past that displacement speed, you start to lose your range drastically. So you're down to 350 nautical miles at most once you're at a fast cruising speed, which is not the case, obviously, with Trident. So those are some of the key features that we wanted to have in the Trident, and have obviously developed along with Grant and the team at the shipyard to produce the Trident 620.
Great, Trevor. One of the unique features on the boat, and we start to see it a lot these days, is what's called a plumb bow. And for those who aren't familiar with the plumb bow, if you look at the current slide, it's basically a vertical or near vertical bow as opposed to a clipper bow, which is typically what you would see on many boats, that sharp angle. If you go back and you look through history, most of the boats from the early 1900s, whether they're warships, cargo ships, cruise lines, all had a plumb bow to them. Can you give us a little insight as to the plumb bow and really what that brings to the table when it comes to the boat design?
Yeah, sure. Well, number one, obviously, of course, it's increasing your waterline length. And once you increase waterline length, you're getting a bit more efficiency for that particular hull length from molded length. So we're obviously increasing waterline length, so it gives us a little bit more speed, it gives us a little bit more efficiency. There's a little less resistance than if you're on a traditional kind of semi-displacement bow section or a bluff planing bow section. There's more efficiency in that. With our particular bow design, it's got a very deep forefoot which is very important, obviously, for a long-range yacht that's going to be out in heavy weather, because you want that plumb bow to be actually cutting the water into a head sea all the time. What you don't want, obviously, is a shallow plumb bow that's obviously popping out of a head sea all the time, and you're going to end up with some slamming. And you'll see a lot of builders have tried to recreate that plumb bow kind of look, but actually when you see the hull form out of the water, there's not much depth to it at all. And in fact, when it runs back to about a third back from the bow section, it's almost going back into a planing hull section again, and there's no depth to the hull, which obviously then gives you difficulties with down the weather helming and steering. We also get more volume as well, which is another important factor. So in the VIP, we get a slightly bigger space than we would have done if we'd used just a normal clipper bow. And that's important as well, because again, for a long range yacht of this length, space is a premium. You want to maximize as much as you can get into it. But in general, it's a performance related thing. It actually gives us a greater speed, it gives us greater range, and it gives us greater performance into a head sea.
Thanks, Trevor. Grant, I know we probably can't count the number of boats you've been on in your lifetime. You've done numerous deliveries for Outer Reef. Can you give us, your firsthand experience on, being on an Outer Reef? Because I know you've taken trips that have been several hundred nautical miles, and I think you have a unique perspective based on your background.
Sure, we've had the Trident from Split here all the way to Malta and back, and we've done deliveries to Monfalcone in Italy. One of them being particularly memorable, where we were in 4.5 meter seas with 45 knots of wind on the nose, particularly short. I don't know if people are aware, but the Adriatic is known for having the shortest seas of any ocean, which means that they're very close together, the waves, and so particularly uncomfortable and I would say dangerous conditions. We obviously had a ship to catch, so we had no choice but to make the run up to Italy, and at one point the anchor was just starting to move a little bit inside the bow plate, and I was concerned about scratching some of the stainless steel. So I went out under the foredeck and lashed that anchor down with absolutely no trouble whatsoever. I mean, the foredeck in 4.5 meters seas, it was a carpet ride, and nobody believes me, and I don't expect anybody to believe me, because of all the boats that I've been on in my lifetime, what I'm describing to you is practically impossible, but I promise you that's what happened. And not only was it comfortable enough for me to stand there and feel that I was safe with the big high bulwarks and the rails around, plenty of room to do what I had to do. In those conditions, I didn't get a single drop of water on me, and we never even had the windscreen wipers on the windscreen. So in a headwind, or slightly quarter, of 40-45 knots in those seas, and no water on the screen. I mean, what can I say?
We have a question that came in from a gentleman named Carlos, and he's asking, did the tank test occur in waves? The picture looks quite calm. So Carlos, to answer your question, the way the tank testing is done, you use a scaled model version, and they obviously scale sea conditions. So there were 2 direction runs in head seas that ranged from calm conditions up to 5-foot seas, anywhere from 5 to 7 seconds apart, which the Testing Institute considers very sloppy or messy seas. And so as the boat moves through and those waves hit the hull, they have sensors all over the boat, and they can actually measure a number of different stresses on the boat, including the movement of the bow section, any stresses on the hull as it comes through one wave onto another. So the tests are actually quite comprehensive, and they are by no means done in just calm tank conditions. They do simulate what they consider a sloppy sea on that front.
Absolutely. Mike, if I could just add that I was present during all of those tank tests, and in that particular photograph, yes, the water looked glassy, but what they do is they simulate these conditions by making the waves from different directions, and so that you end up with this sloppy water in the tank, and then run the boat through that. Something else I can add is that we placed a kuna coin on the foredeck of the model before the sloppy run, and then it did the run. Two things happened. The coin did not move, and we just simply placed it there. The coin did not move, and there was no water on that foredeck.
And that was at 16 knots.
That's correct.
So that was a pretty fast run. Grant, since we're chatting with you, as I had mentioned, we had really met you back in 2008 through Ward. In the shipyard, you basically oversee construction, purchasing, all of the engineering on the boat. Can you give us us and the viewers a quick background on how you got started and some of your experience, why we were so eager to get you on board?
Sure. Well, look, boat building was in my family. My uncle was a well-renowned boat builder in New Zealand, and he inspired me and tutored me early. I built my first boat when I was 9 years old. It was kind of a box, but it floated, and we had a sail. And I went on to become a fisherman, repairing fishing boats. Served my time as a wooden boat builder. Went on to complete a long list of conversions, refits, and new builds of all sizes and in different materials, and ended up founding and running a very successful super yacht interior business for a little over 15 years, and eventually became in the inception team for the Trident 620, which is something I've really enjoyed.
Grant, one of the things that we spoke about earlier on was some unique construction methods that we use. One of them is resin infusion. And to give just a very quick background on resin infusion, the concept of resin infusion is where you basically lay up all of the dry goods into a hull, and through a very well thought out and organized computer program, you draw resin into the hull. It gets absorbed at a certain rate at a certain time. Excess resin is then taken out. What we're looking at here is the computer model that was done by a specialty firm. I believe it was in the UK, Grant?
Actually in France. Yeah.
So I'm sorry, in France, because you can't just throw pieces together, throw a few vacuum lines in, and do this process. So this is an example of the computer model that was designed. Now, the way we do our hulls, we have a solid spine, I call it, or a backbone that's typically 2.5 to 3 feet on either side of the keel, and then we get into this resin infused process. Brent, can you give us a little bit of example of the benefits of the infusion and kind of what we're looking at here on this photo of the actual infusion of one of our hulls?
Well, look, in a nutshell, the main advantage from infusion is really optimum strength for weight. With infusion, exactly the correct amount of resin is infused into the fiber makeup, which is multi-layered. But when you hand lam or spray with a chopper gun or something like that, you tend to either over laminate or put too much resin in, and often you end up with dry spots as well. With a well-designed infusion, you can eliminate those dry spots and have a very, very even layer of composite. other advantages are environmental. To hand lay such a big hull with the styrenes open into the atmosphere, it's toxic, it's very uncomfortable and smelly, and we would have to have lots of scrubbers and environmental equipment to take care of to take those styrenes out of the air and to make it safe to actually carry out the process. So that's another advantage of infusion. But structurally, in a nutshell, optimum strength for weight.
Okay. Thanks, Grant. We have a question from Brett, and I know, Brett, you've been through a number of our webinars, and I think possibly we've confused you. So the question is, can we describe the high-level differences between Trident and the Classic series? And so I'll do my best to give you a quick difference between the two. So our Classic series long-range motor yachts are really fully customized interior boats. When we sit down, as you, I think, were watching on one of our webinars, we really hand design the interior of the boat. We hand build them. The owners really have say into everything from trim, molding, cabinet configuration, various wood sources, things like that. It's a very, very customized boat. The hull form is semi-displacement. It's just definitely a little bit of a different animal than the Tribrid hull. We do use solid hand-laid fiberglass on that boat. So while we still have very strong hull forms and panels, we do carry around a lot of excess weight. That excess weight on the Classic boat down in the hull gives the boat a lower center of gravity. We don't mind the excess weight in that boat because, as you've probably learned, most of our owners are running at 9 or 10 knots with a bigger engine package. That hull form will get up to anywhere between 18 and 20 knots, but it's a little bit of a different animal in terms of hull shape and construction methods. The Trident, because we wanted to have a more efficient aspect to it, both in speed and fuel burn, weight plays an important role in that. And so we chose to go with the resin infusion for the reasons that Grant mentioned. We get actually a similar strength panel, just with a little bit less weight, which gives the boat a little bit more economy and a little bit more fuel burn. The Trident series also doesn't have the customization on the interior. We have a couple wood choices, we have a couple different layouts, but it's just not as customizable as the Classic series is. Let me know, Brett, if that did answer your question. So that should go from there. Trev, I also have a question for you from a gentleman named Pete. He's saying he's looking at the Milagino, the Nevettas, and he's wondering if you can compare, particularly from a seakeeping ability, how those builders might compare to Trident and what we've designed.
Yeah, sure. Well, I would suggest probably, the first thing anyone should do when you're looking at this style of boat, because you are buying a boat that's been promoted as a long-range cruising yacht that can handle some weather, is to have first, of course, sea trial one. And I think that there in itself will show considerable difference between the different brands and the makers that are producing this style of yacht. And just to go back on what I was saying earlier on, when you're looking at a builder that's spent 40 years building production boats in the planing boat market, and is newly into the long range market, there's a long period of time that you've got to get to learn, what those clients are looking for, what the expectations are, and what kind of sea conditions you're going to be operating in. So when I'm talking to my clients, I would always say, think very carefully, when you're looking at, boats at a boat show where it's all very glamorous and, it's flat cam or whatever, because often when you take that boat out and you sea trial it in some unfavorable conditions, you'll be quite surprised in the different handling characteristics between each particular brand. So in the terms of the Trident, these are boats that are built by very experienced long-range yacht builders who have brought their experience into this market. So, you're looking at a hull that has been tried and tested We have, as you say, we've done all the tank testing. We've obviously got now hundreds and hundreds of hours of under the keel in all sorts of sea conditions around the world, and it's proven itself time and time again. So my suggestion would be to say that this is a long-range yacht that is capable of doing everything that it's actually monikered with. Whereas I think you'll find with many of the other builders, particularly those that are using the IPS system in particular, where the after sections of the hull have to be very flat in order to get any efficiency. And what you tend to find there is that the down the weather kind of helming is quite difficult because you just don't have any directional capability. There's no keel on it. And in general, most of them don't have a keel, whereas obviously the Trident does it as a full-length deep keel, which obviously gives you that directional stability when things get a little bit tricky. So there's a significant difference. They may look quite similar, although some of them are very cutting edge, which will obviously date quite quickly. But it's really the proof of the pudding is actually in sea trialing it, and I would suggest that's something that somebody should do before they consider to put any money down on anything, and that will really show which brand you should be going into.
Thanks, Trevor. Grant, we're going to jump back over to something that is in your wheelhouse. That is the interior design, fit out, the methods that furniture is built, put in the boat. We use a process called modular engineering for the design of our boat. If you look at the upper right-hand corner, that's a 3D version that we engineer everything before we put it into reality. That is a 3D rendering of how we want to build the lower deck. And modular engineering is basically building sections of the boat outside of the boat on the shop floor and then putting them inside the boat. Can you run through the slide we have up, explain what we're looking at, and again, some of the benefits of this type of construction, as well as how your mega yacht experience in terms of building interiors? I know you built for Trinity, again, one of the largest mega yacht builders in the States, and a couple of the Taiwan boats. I know you've done refits on Fed ships. All of that experience we pulled into this project. Maybe you can go into a little bit of detail as to what we're looking at here, and again, the benefits from your perspective as the builder of the boat.
Sure. Well, when I started in the super yacht interior business, it was in New Zealand, and they did 250-meter conversions in New Zealand, and the market in New Zealand started to dry up, and I had to look elsewhere, and that's where I started doing interior fit outs offshore, particularly with the Trinity Yachts, as you mentioned, and many others, from 40 meters to 120 meters. Now, being in New Zealand, so far away from the United States and the rest of the world, when I built an interior there and then posted it over and sent my guys to fit it, obviously, if it didn't fit, that was a very expensive exercise. So we developed a number of systems that allowed us to build efficiently off the boat in New Zealand, and then send the interiors offshore and have them fit into the boat as they should in the quickest possible time. So although obviously we're talking a much smaller vessel, what I was able to bring through was the experience of tolerances and how to marry the interface of the actual vessel and work those tolerances in, so that we knew it was going to fit. We know it's going to fit. It's going to fit correctly. And one of the biggest things with the super yachts was obviously noise and vibration, and I guess we'll talk about that some more later. In this top slide, it's the 3D model of how we created the liners that are eventually put into the hull. The photo underneath that is the forward deck, the VIP liner, and the guest VIP bathroom liner, and various components of furniture. And if you can see, that's all sitting on a white sole, the white platform there, which is actually the lower sole. And, you know, it gives us the advantage of already cutting hatch holes, gives us the advantage of already cutting holes for, you know, switches, run the wiring, start running the plumbing, all of those things. That can happen on the floor before it actually even goes into the boat. And then the next photo to the left is actually the MSR, and again you can see the hatch cutouts under the double bed. You can see the staircase in position and those sorts of things. So it allows us a lot more efficiency building on the floor of the factory instead of trying to build in situ inside the boat. Gives us a better, cleaner, lighter work area, which helps us to control the quality. And it also, the main advantage is it allows us to work on several different phases of the construction at once. So looking at this photo, you can see the one underneath the computer model. If you look a little to the right, you can see that there's a superstructure on, that's correct, yeah, the superstructure on the factory floor. Yeah, so we're working on that superstructure, we're working on this VIP lower deck, we're working on the MSR lower deck, all at the same time.
And so, and that really kind of gets shown on this next slide. This is a superstructure sitting there. The flooring, which is an infused panel, is already installed. The photo on the right, we've already started putting part of that soundproofing in the boat on where we walk. But this is a good example, would you say, of being able to work on multiple fronts. Theoretically, we build the hull section, the lower accommodations, the main deck, all separate, and then we marry the two of them together.
Yeah, that's correct. And it's, you know, it's efficient. You know, in a boat this size, so if we have 19, 20, you know, production staff, you can't put 20 of them all in that superstructure, you know. So we have to build simultaneously the various stages, and then we can maximize our efficiency and maximize the efficiency of our workforce. And also in those conditions, you minimize damage, mistakes, those sorts of things, because you haven't got a whole bunch of people trying to falling over each other, kind of, you know, to get something done in one small space.
And the photo that we're looking at now, we're showing where we've started to actually fit out furniture. I know we do a combination of offsite CNC machining, and then we have some very skilled carpenters who do the fitting out. And this is a real good example of how we can work on two fronts. Can you give us a little bit of insight as to how this furniture goes together, how it's isolated, how we avoid squeaks and things like that?
Sure. Well, again, this comes from the super yacht background, and when we first developed the furniture package for Trident, we used actually one of my key designers from my old company, and so the actual engineering in the furniture is super yacht grade engineering, and we use super yacht grade materials and construction methods, and this is just something that's close to my heart, being a traditional boat builder. If you put the money and effort into a luxury boat, you want it to last, and that's the way that we build our furniture. It's built heavier than I know it's built heavier than a lot of the lighter go fast boats in our segment, but it's built strong and to last with high quality veneers, balanced veneers, very high quality ply. We don't use anything in our interiors that's cheap and nasty. It's all high quality stuff. In terms of isolation, absolutely everything is isolated. There is no wood to wood join. that doesn't have a barrier, and that's why we don't get the squeaking that you get in so many of the other boats. That and the attention to the noise and vibration control.
Again, actually, that was good timing because we did have a question come in from Carlos asking if a lot of your vibration and sound techniques came from your super yacht world, and I think you just explained that that pretty well.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, that was the biggest part of super yacht interiors. Really is establishing that noise and vibration control, and we were very, very experienced at it, and once again use the best materials we can possibly find. I see in this slide there showing a penetration. All of our bulkheads are foam core panels, and we use a composite collar or penetration before anything goes through, and then if that for instance is wiring, conduit, plumbing, whatever it is, it's then set with a rise, which is a slightly expanding rubber type product. And if it's in the engine room bulkhead, of course it's a fireproof one. So it's a flexible but sealed treatment to the pipe or wiring or whatever it is that's going through. There's nothing that's you can see some plumbing pipes in that picture, which the brackets, the pipes obviously are kept in brackets to keep them from vibrating or clashing against each other, but those brackets are set onto a board which in itself is isolated to the hull with a flexible mounting. So so we have no hard hits anywhere in the boat we possibly can. So we're either fully laminated or we are on a flexible mount.
And then just a little side note, we also use a product called Noxidol that we spray around the waterline on the hull, which helps reduce the slapping noise as well. So it's obvious. Okay.
So sorry, yeah, that the Noxidol is a deadening coating, which deadens the surface and stops the spread of that slapping noise as you know on the chine. And yeah, we put that all around the waterline areas where slapping can be an issue, but that's only one. That's just applied directly to the hull itself. But inside of that is a whole range of insulation, and if you look at our engine room insulation, for instance, we have combination of the three pillars of sound deadening, if you like, or stopping vibration transfer. You have to have mass, and if you look at that insulation that fellow has in his hand there, so that fellow might have been me, but the darker line through the middle of it is a barium loaded vinyl. So and then you have the foam. So in the foam is a monolithic material which catches the vibration. The loaded barium is mass, which stops the vibration penetrating. And as well as that, we have soft mounting and an air gap, which again gives a space for the vibrations to lose its sound spinning around in nowhere. So if you can, explain
a
like
lot. a lot of your background is in there. We have a question from a gentleman named Michael. He's asking, is the philosophy and the management the same for Outer Reef Classic and Trident? His understanding is we built one series in Taiwan, we built these boats in Croatia. So to Michael, to answer your question, philosophies are 100% the same. The companies are owned by the same person. Our management team is the same. Our service team is the same. We are a service-oriented company. So if you had been at some of our previous webinars where we talked about how important service is, customer service, warranty, and things, that is a company philosophy that anything that has the name Outer Reef in it, whether it's a Classic Series built in Taiwan or our Trident Series built in Croatia, is the absolute cornerstone of our whole business model. So the answer is yes, the philosophies are identical. We put equal care in each of them, and it's just really what we're about. I have another question from a gentleman, Peter. He's asking, why do we build one series in Croatia and one series in Taiwan? And then the answer to that is a pretty simple one. So our Classic Series, we came out with probably 15 plus years before we saw the gap in the market where we really wanted to design the Trident Series to fill what we felt was a missing piece. Our Classic Series shipyard had a long history of doing the hand-built, fully customized interiors, the hull form, the construction methods. It's just in their wheelhouse as to what they excel at, and it gives us the flexibility on the Classic side to really customize the boats. When we looked at doing the Trident Series with resin infusion and some different technologies, one, our Classic yard was full to capacity. They really didn't have room to do that and not hurt our capacity there. And then mixing the two construction methods, we just wanted to go to an area where they had a lot more experience in the resin infusion. We do limit to 3 wood choices and a couple different interiors, so we can use a lot of these techniques that Grant mastered doing mega yacht interiors to very efficiently put high-end interiors into the Trident Series and take advantage of his background. So the two boats are a little bit of a different animal in how they're put together, and we chose the 2 locations that really excelled at those type of construction methods. So hopefully that that answers your question on why we would have chose one over the other. Let's see if we have enough. Okay, so thank you. We did get to Peter's question. We have another question coming in from John. He's saying that he's followed ORY for many years and has heard some very good things about our service department. Is that the same as with Trident? And again, I would reiterate what I just said, same company, same philosophy. The shipyard is there for our support. Our service department is 100% committed to everything we do. I do have another question for Trevor. This is coming in from James. Do you see a trend towards the Trident series of boats, the style?
Yes, I would say there is definitely a trend within a certain demographic for that style of boat. Obviously, in our Classic series, we have a very devoted following, very experienced set of owners that very much appreciate the Classic series. But when it comes to the Trident, what we're seeing is there's a younger demographic coming in that have been through the whole, for want of a better word, the planing boat production market kind of, I'd almost call it pain to some extent, where they're buying a particular brand. They start with a smaller boat, and then they get traded into a larger one, and then they get traded into another one within the same brand. And then obviously they want to exit at some point to move into something else. And then the shock occurs when they realize the depreciation and the value that they've lost in the investment. And these people tend to be quite astute once they start to look around for another yacht and another genre they want to move into, because their experiences are now allowing them to take them further afield and spend longer time afloat. They perhaps have more time. So they're looking more for the long range kind of yacht that can stay afloat for a week, 2 weeks at a time without having to keep bunkering and refueling and reprovisioning and whatever. And so they start to look into the secondhand market, because obviously that's a very good indicators to see the residuals that you'll find later on when you want to exit that brand. And obviously with the Outer Reef, looking at our classic series and obviously knowing that same company is producing the Trident, those residuals are very high, and that's obviously coloring people's thinking now. These more experienced, younger demographic that have bought several boats in a planing boat market, now looking to upgrade. And so yes, I think they're seeing the benefits of longer range, better efficiency, better seakeeping, quieter, higher levels of construction, just the whole package in something that's more, yes, contemporary, but still a classic style, elegant yacht that is not going to date and it's not going to devalue the way it would do if you were buying a normal production boat that's just built in volume. So yes, it's not going to be taking over the planing production boat market anytime soon in terms of huge volume, but those people that are astute enough to know what they're looking for, the Trident obviously is starting to really hit the mark, and so we're seeing great interest in that, and it's doing very well.
Thanks, Trevor. I have a question from Daniel. He's asking, will the Sky Lounge version be offered on the Trident? Daniel, unfortunately at this point, it is not an option for the boat. The way the boat is designed, the hardtop really isn't designed to convert into a Sky Lounge. And quite frankly, the weight, we're obviously very sensitive on seakeeping things, and the weight up on that area is something that really we can't do at this time. That being said, we have had several owners who have put up an easy 2CY type of enclosures, if you're looking to just enclose it from the elements or possibly put air conditioning and things up there. But unfortunately, at this point in time on this particular boat, the Sky Lounge option is not really available. I had another question from Glenn. Glenn must be a fan of our webinars. He's asking, when is our next one and what do we plan to cover? Glenn, I'll have to check with our marketing department on that and find out which one is next. Unfortunately, I don't have an accurate answer for you at this point, but if you stand by, I'm sure we'll let everybody know what that will be. Trevor, I have another question from you from a gentleman named Dave. He's asking, in your experience with the builds and things you've done, have you ever seen anyone else do the same type of details, soundproofing and things that Grant is putting into the Tridents? Are there other builders who are doing a lot of the same things we are?
If you're talking about the production market and generally what's out there when you go to a boat show, which is 99% of everything out there, certainly from my experience, having been in pretty much all of the shipyards, one has to understand that you've got to see their business model and how they actually manufacture, how they distribute and sell, and recognize that obviously they have a certain way that they distribute their product and sell their product, and that generally through in the bigger factories, they're going through a distributor initially, and then they're going into a dealership network, and then they're obviously going into the retail market. So there's quite a lot of margin in there built into the boat in terms of it's covering for these distributorships and dealerships and whatever. And that kind of restricts you a lot on what you can do with the technology and how far you can push that with regards to the quality of the materials you're putting in and the time that you spend constructing the vessel. But when you're dealing like such as Outer Reef and with the Trident and obviously the Classic Series, where it's virtually direct, straight from the manufacturer to the client, the vast majority of their money is going into the construction of the yacht. So if you want to call it foot for foot or pound for pound or dollar for dollar, you're getting a lot more money is going into the construction of an Outer Reef Trident or a Classic Series. So we can afford to put things like, for example, if we're looking at a Classic Series, it's Maxwell winches, or if it's the Trident, we can put in the highest grade of cabling and electronic systems. We can put in all of the soundproofing and the vibration equipment that's going into construction, the time that goes into produce that and to engineer it. So in general, there's more to play with when you're buying direct from a one-stop shop, as it were. And so generally, I haven't found anything else unless you really go to the custom market and you're looking at a Dutch yard, which is going to charge you obviously a significant amount of money over and above what a production boat price would be to get to that level. And even then, they probably aren't meeting the same sort of quality standards that we are, because again, they will specialize in something up to a certain size level or on a higher level upwards, and it's in a different price category altogether. But generally, I haven't found anything yet that, in terms of technology and the way the boats are constructed, that matches the Trident at all. I think it's very unique, and I think it's something that once people get onto it on the boat at a yacht show, or even coming to the shipyard, we'll see, once you get into the guts of it, you can understand why the boat has been built the way it has, and why it's achieving the performance that it is.
Yeah, thanks, Trevor. We had a question, I think it was from Brett again, asking pricing and delivery time between the two series. In general, a well-equipped Trident 620 is going to have a retail price somewhere in the $2 million to $2.1 million. A classic series on the 61 is going to be, again, without knowing specific equipment, but somewhere in the $2.5 million range. That would be before any discounting that we would negotiate. Trident delivery time, we would have the next hull could be completed and ready for shipping in about 9-10 months. Classic series is going to be roughly about the same for shipping, about 9 or 10 months to build with our current production. Which leads me to an interesting question from Felix asking, can I take delivery of a Trident in Croatia rather than in the States? It's kind of a bucket list thing. And the answer to that, Felix, is absolutely. Our shipyard is in Croatia. It is on the water. We have had owners take the boats there. It's beautiful cruising ground. So if you wanted to take the boat and stay, it's actually quite convenient. We can work directly with the shipyard on helping make arrangements. Obviously, any warranty work and things could be done locally as well. So 100%, it's a great idea. It's a beautiful country, beautiful cruising grounds, and you'd actually get to meet Grant in person. What could be better than that? We have a question on dual power as well. So the question is, the boats are basically, in this day and age, all of the equipment is basically 50, 60 cycle herc. Believe it or not, one of the only pieces of equipment that manufacturers don't make in dual cycle is a washer and a dryer for your clothes. So being able to have a dual frequency boat is not very difficult to do. And so, yes, we can absolutely have the boats available for using dual frequency. It would just be a function of how in depth we would need to get in terms of what equipment additional we might want to put on it, and or if you're okay running a generator just to do laundry, that makes it real simple. I had a follow-up question from gentleman Carlos, who said he had bought one of the European competitors a few years ago, and when he sold it in the spring, he had almost a 50% hit on the value of the boat. And he was part of one of our past seminars where we actually went over resale value on Outer Reef Classics. He's asking, do we have any history on the Trident series? While it's a newer series and most of the owners have held on to them, our track record for the boats that have come back on the market has been equally as strong. I think the last 62 that came on the market, that owner actually ended up buying an 86 Classic series from us. And if memory serves me correct, and I'm 99% sure it will, I think he sold the boat net for the same he had paid for it. So I think, as Trevor had mentioned before, anything that really has the Outer Reef name on it just tends to hold their values well, and has the moniker of just being well-built boats that are going to hold value. Peter, hi Peter, how are you? He's asking, what is the difference between the new stabilizers and the classics? So I'll, without getting too technical into it, Peter, there's a couple of different things. You have active fin stabilizers, and there are basically two types of fins. They have the very traditional kind of standard straight fin, and there's a company called Side Power that has a fin they call a vector fin that actually has a curve to it, kind of like a dorsal fin on a dolphin. They both work in the same way, whereas water passes over top of those fins, it creates lift as they actuate back and forth. So depending on the application, the vector fin tends to have a little bit less drag than a standard fin. We use at the moment a gyroscope, which is basically a very heavy counter motion cylinder that spins at ridiculous speeds and uses that inertia and the computer to basically offset the roll. They both work very well. They both have some pretty specific areas that they do best in. And so hopefully, without getting too much in the weeds, that answers your question. So we have a few more questions rolling in. Brian is asking if we have any decibel readings. We do. Brian, if you can just shoot me an email address, I'll be happy to send that out to you. I don't have those numbers off the top of my head, but we absolutely have done it. So we can get those numbers out to you if you would provide us with your information. We can do that. I'm going to take a quick scan through here. I think we did got all the questions answered. So we'll hold on for a few more minutes, but we've covered I think a lot. I think we've learned that the Trident Series was a very well thought out boat. It was very well engineered. We hired some of the industry's most respected experts in designing the boat, in testing the boat, and putting the boat together. So we were very proud of the boat. It's an excellent, excellent opportunity to take a look at a unique construction design that you're just not going to find with most of the mass builders. We appreciate everyone's time and joining us. And if you have any questions, you can go into our website and you can reach out to our office here. If you are in the European market, you can certainly reach out to Outer Reef Europe and get in touch with Trevor. So I think that's all we have. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate you guys joining us. Grant, you can get on with your evening. I know we've kept you late. And,
no problem.
Trevor, same as you. You want to get back to your family and carry on. So again, thank you, everybody. Keep an eye out. We'll be letting you know when our next webinar will be. And we look forward to seeing you then. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
Yes, thank you.